Today we'll take a look at the corn nitrogen calculator. The corn nitrogen calculator can be found on page 24 of the Agronomy guide. So turn to page 24 of the Agronomy guide and you can follow along. Okay, so the first thing we need to do when using the corn nitrogen calculator is look on the left hand side of the page. This is the actual calculator itself. And the very first thing, A, it says base N requirement. And so for the base N requirement, you go to table A, which is up here, and you have to know two things. You have to know what the soil texture is, from clay all the way through to sands and loams and silty clays and silt loams and all the soil textures. And you also have to know where you are in the province. That's probably the easiest thing to figure out. You're either in southwestern and central Ontario, or you are in eastern Ontario. Eastern Ontario includes Frontenac, Renfrew, and the counties to the east of them. So I'm going to do this for Ridgetown, and a clay loam soil in Ridgetown. And so for base N requirement, we go over here to table A. We find clay loam on table A, go straight across. Ridgetown is in southwestern Ontario, and it says 40. That is our base N requirement. So that base N requirement would go into this spot here on the corn nitrogen calculator. So let me put that in right now. Oops. So we start off with 40. So our base N requirement is 40. The next thing we do is we go to the B, which is the yield adjustment. And for yield adjustment, the more corn you produce, the more nitrogen you need. And that is your expected yield, not your desired yield. Expected yield is essentially your crop insurance average. Desired yield would be 5 times that, but we're not going to go with that. We'll stick with a typical yield for the Ridgetown area. And just to make the math easier, because I'm doing this in my head, let's say that our yield adjustment are going to get 10 tons per hectare. 10 tons per hectare is 160 bushels per acre, which isn't unreasonable for a clay loam soil in the Ridgetown area. So I'll put that in. Might be a little low for a lot of guys now, but makes the math easier. So you take the yield adjustment, the yield, expected yield, which is 10 tons per hectare, you multiply that by 13.6. So 10 times 13.6 is 136. Okay, so the next thing you do is you go to C. C is a heat unit adjustment. So you have to know the number of heat units you get, which for Ridgetown is 3450. And to make the math a little bit easier for me, I'm going to say it's 3400. Just for fun, I'm a little north, let's say we're a little north of Ridgetown, so it's 3400. So 3400 goes in here. So 3400 is the heat units we get. And it says, take your heat units, 3,400, subtract 2,800, so 3,400 minus 2,800 is 600, so we have 600. And we multiply 600 times 0.041. So 600 times 0.041 is 24.6. At least last time I checked. Okay? And so far, so good. The next thing is D. D is the previous crop adjustment. So depending on what you grew last year, that's going to influence what how much nitrogen you need this year. So let's say that last year we grew a clover cover crop, and let's say it's no-till. Okay, we're no-tilling some clay loam, so we like a challenge, so we'll no-till clay loam. So that is part D. So we go over to table D over here. And if you look down table D, you'll see various previous crops. Okay, so we grew winter wheat, underseeded to red clover, so it would be a clover cover crop. And there's two options, there's plowed and no-till. Because we're no-tilling, we use the no-till version, and it says the adjustment is 67. So 67 goes in here. Oops. So 67 goes in there. And so we are now running out of space in my on my screen. So I'll take a quick break, and then I'll adjust the camera because I need to. But so far we have 40 for our base N, 136 for our yield adjustment, 24.6 for our heat unit adjustment, and then we should subtract the previous crop adjustment. So we would subtract 67. Okay, and so we will proceed on with E just after I alter and change the camera, move the camera around a little bit. See you soon. Okay, I'm back, and so we will proceed onwards to E, which is the price ratio adjustment for nitrogen relative to corn price. The more expensive corn is, or the more valuable corn is, and the cheaper nitrogen is, the more we can afford to use. If nitrogen is expensive and corn is cheap, then the less we can afford to use. And so we will do so let's assume that corn's running $200 a ton, and that the price of nitrogen is $1.50 a kilogram. Okay, so we'll use that assumption. So we go over to table E. So we're on part E. We go to table E. We look down, find the corn price of $200 per ton, which is right here. And we look across to find the price of nitrogen, which is $1.50 a kilogram. And so we go straight across from the 200 tons to the column labeled 150, and our adjustment is 17. So 17 will go in right here. 17. And you'll notice there's a minus sign there. And now we get to do some math. So we do the math, so 40 plus 136 is 176, plus 24.6 is 200.6. Yep, 200.6. Minus 67. So that takes us down to 133.6 minus 17. So that's 100 and... Oops, my math isn't working very well today. So that takes us down to 116.6. So it's 116.6. That is suggested total nitrogen. You'd think we were done, but nope, we're not. Okay, so what we have to do now is go through the rest, because we may have put some nitrogen on in other ways. Okay, so we'll go to G. G is deduct starter nitrogen. So if you are using a starter fertilizer and you have nitrogen in that starter fertilizer, you would subtract that from your 116.6. And in this case, we're not going to use any starter fertilizer. We broadcast all our P&K last fall, so we're not going to use any starter fertilizer in this case. And it says deduct manure nitrogen credits for H. In our part of the country, there are relatively few people with livestock, so we're going to say we don't have any manure to spread, so our nitrogen adjustment there is 0. So our pre-plant additional nitrogen is 116.6 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare. You'd think we were done, but nope, we're not. We still have one more thing to do. In southwestern Ontario, we found that depending on the soil texture you have, you may be able to apply less nitrogen than the pre-plant version if you're side dressing. If you put your nitrogen on side dress, which is after the crop's up and growing, between the rows after the crop's growing, you avoid some of the losses through leaching and volatilization, and so you don't need quite as much nitrogen, or you may not need as much nitrogen as you would pre-plant. And so let's say we're going to side dress our nitrogen. We're going to use a 28% UAN solution, side dress. And so we go down, it says J, side dress additional N, go to table J, find the value and multiply it by I. Okay, so we go down to J, and we are on a clay loam soil. Oops. Gravity is sometimes your friend, sometimes not so much. But we're going to go down to, sit for me. There we go. To J, we have a clay loam soil. It says adjustment is 0.8. So we multiply this 116.6 times 0.8. And so if I do that rapidly in my head, which sometimes is kind of interesting. So we have an 8. We have 8 and 4 left over is 52 with 5 left over. 8 plus 5 is a 13 and 1, 8, 9. Oops, I lied. 8, 52, 13 and 1, 8, 9, yeah. So our answer here is 93.28. So if I quickly go back through that, I'll quickly go back through that, but I'm going to have to adjust the camera again. I'll be back in just a second. Okay, so I'm back. And again, so let's go through that real quickly. So our base N requirement in Ridgetown, southwestern Ontario with a clay loam soil was 40. Our yield adjustment, we're growing 10 tons per hectare. We multiply 10 times 13.6 is 136. And then our crop heat units, I rounded down to 3,400 just because it made the math easier, but we have 3,400 heat units. And so our total is 600 minus 2,800. So we have 600 heat units times 0.041, which is 24.6. Those get added together, and then we subtract the previous crop adjustment. We grew red clover. We had a red clover cover crop last year that we no-tilled into, so our adjustment 67 kilos per hectare. Our price ratio adjustment with $200 per ton corn at $1.50 a kilo nitrogen was 17. So we take our three things added together, we subtract these two, came up with 116.6. We had no starter fertilizer, we had no manure nitrogen, and so those are zeros. So we still have 116.6 that we would apply pre-plant if we were applying pre-plant. But we're going to apply nitrogen side dressed, and so we take our 116.6 and we multiply it by the value given in table J. And for clay loam, the value is 0.8. So 116.6 times 0.8 is 93.28. So we would require 93.28 kilos per hectare of nitrogen. Most people would probably round that, but we'll stick with that number now. 93.28 kilograms per hectare of nitrogen side dress is what we need to add to this crop. So that is how you use the corn nitrogen calculator. Again, it depends on where you live and your soil texture in your previous crop, the price of corn, the price of nitrogen, and the method of application are all incorporated into the corn nitrogen calculator. So that's how you use it. If you have any questions, go through this again, and we'll talk about it in class as well. So have a good day, everybody, and away we go.